Hello, I'm Brian Cruz, the founder and CEO of New Sapience. Welcome to session 8 of our short course in Synthetic Intelligence 101. In this session, we're going to talk about risks and concerns, which in the context of artificial intelligence is a very timely topic. And we're going to talk about that. But before that, we're going to talk more about the risks that investors look at, that is the risks of the company. Then we'll move on to understand and talk about the potential impacts of sapiens on people's individual lives. We've already, of course, talked about how powerful and the advent of digital personal assistants like our sapiens that actually understand what you're telling it will have on people. But let's also look about some possible negative impacts. After that, we'll talk about why some experts today believe that artificial general intelligence poses an existential risk for humanity. And then we'll discuss the potential for humans to misuse sapiens. And finally, we'll talk about sapiens' prime directives. Investor risks. Professional investors and venture capitalists really divide risk in evaluating the investability of a company into 4 different areas. And we'll discuss each one of those in turn. The market, operational risk means, does the whole package come together? The staff, the market, the business plan, does it fit the markets, and so on. Technical risks, of course, the technology itself. And finally, financial risks. Markets. We've already talked about the fact that our technology has huge markets, both for consumers and commercial. And the commercial side, it's natural language processing, industrial and business automation, and robotics. But one question that people ask is, do people in these markets buy from startups? In the case of the consumer, I would say very much yes. Basically, the initial people for our sapiens, our companion sapiens, will be early adopters who basically run their lives around their smartphones. And we've been preparing for that by being very active on the social media channels. We vet out social media channels all the time to start to build a larger and larger following of this target market. Of course, not only young people or early adopters are going to benefit from the companion sapiens, but the young people will probably be the first ones to buy it for their parents and grandparents who will very much need it. Commercial is a little different. That's quite different, in fact. To get into the commercial markets, and we have many commercial markets, you need to tailor a specific kind of demonstration using your technology. So we will create pro-sapiens demonstrations for market verticals one at a time. And we will show them how our technology will look as it's configured for their specific market vertical. And that's something that we've done in the past in my previous company in the space business. You have to build a demo if you're going to show them something that's quite different than they're used to. But if you do, and you have the technology and the solutions they're looking for, then you do penetrate those markets. From the operational standpoint, is your business model and does your market match? In our case, the risk really is almost the opposite from what would normally be considered a risk, in that you don't have a market, or you might not get customer acceptance into your market. For us, the risk is not too few markets, perhaps, but too many. And so as we go into the commercial market specifically, we're going to have a very focused plan to one market after another to penetrate that. And we do have such a plan. We're going to start with the professional market that we know the best, in which case that would be in the space operations market. Then going into healthcare, we have a lot of depth in the healthcare industries as well. And that will give us time to bring on more expertise in other market verticals one at a time. Is our financial model realistic? Well, we have an advantage in terms of that. We do not need vast resources that other types of AI require. We do not have to raise millions or billions of dollars. If you're looking at for instance, the history of ChatGPT and those, OpenAI, which creates ChatGPT, was endowed with basically promises of $1 billion, and it was supposed to be an open thing. He soon realized he needed 10 times that much. And so he had to basically create a deal with Microsoft to get that kind of money. We do not need that kind of money. A few millions of dollars is all we need to get our product on the market. After that, we have huge gross margins because of the scalability of our technology. We have no legal issues, entanglements of any sort. And from the standpoint of the management team, our management team has been called an investor's dream. Our team is deeply experienced. All of us have decades of experience, multiple serial entrepreneurs, multiple exits, realizing hundreds of millions of dollars in total. And for many of us, this already is or becoming the defining project of our career. We will bring this technology to the market. The technology itself, one of the questions investors ask is, what problems are you solving? I think, of course, in the largest sense, today, as I just mentioned, any kind of automation, whether you're talking about automation through AI, business rules, or any sort of automation, it requires massive resources. We do not. We solve that problem. And then, of course, with other things of AI today, a lot of attention has been given to AI bias, the fact that AI, particularly large language models, generate lots of misinformation. They're calling it hallucinations, but they're really just, it's the nature of the statistical processing. They don't know what the words mean, so when they generate text, they don't know if it means anything. And then there's the fear of existential risk to humanity that I mentioned earlier and that we will address next. We don't have any of those problems. AI bias comes out of training it on large data sets. We do not train on large data sets. Misinformation, we understand what the words mean, and the knowledge that Sapience process and utilize and extend is originally carefully curated from human experts. So we have an approach which is fundamentally different from current solutions. Also, our technology is entirely owned and patented by ourselves. We're not dependent on others for the technology. And of course, in the end, scalability is everything. Is there available capital to take us where we need to go? Again, we have a huge advantage over OpenAI, where he needed tens of billions of dollars. We only need millions. But it has been a challenge and is a challenge that we have for raising capital. And that's the challenge of being what investor Peter Thiel called a 0-to-1 company. In his book, 0-to-1, he talks about companies that come out from left field with a contrarian technology, which is entirely new. Most companies that investors are familiar with are doing variations on a proven theme. They're the 1, the 2s, there's the 2, the 3 type companies. The problem with the 0-to-1 company that their technology, comparatively, it's certainly new, but may also be strange. And we've summarized the challenge there to something we call the Gutenberg effect. The joke is that Mr. Gutenberg presents this idea for a printing press to investors who are initially impressed, but when they go and do their technical due diligence, they cool. When asked why, they say, well, Gutenberg, it sounded good, but when we went down to the book experts down on the street of scribes, they all looked at us like we were crazy. However, we are overcoming that effect, and this course, New Sapience 101, is one of the ways that we're doing that. We are the experts in the technology, and we're providing all the materials needed for investors to do as deep a technical due diligence as they need to do. But you're not going to be able to go outside the company for experts because there aren't any experts in synthetic knowledge except those of us here at New Sapience. Timing is one of the most important factors, maybe the most important factor in the success of a startup. And we think timing is really coming right up for us. And largely it's because the big tech companies and their circuits like OpenAI have created a market and an appetite for capabilities in terms of AI, automation, natural language understanding digital personal assistants and so on and so forth, that they can't really deliver on. There are deep problems with the offerings that they've created right now. And even with today's big language models like OpenGPT, again, they've gotten huge publicity and they're being rapidly adopted, but they're very problematical. And today, if you look at keep up with the news media, the negative articles about these language models are coming into balance with the enthusiastic ones. We've seen this kind of effect before. So ChatGPT and the other chatbots are clearly in a period, a hype bubble, which seems to be bursting. So as that happens, more and more investors are going to be looking around and saying, well, that really didn't get us where we thought we were going to be. So we've discussed from the investor standpoint, the risk of making an investment. But what about the technology itself? One of the other things that, of course, people worry about for AI is losing jobs. Now, increasingly, I think people are starting to question whether the hype about the chatbots taking over so many jobs is really going to come to fruition or not. I myself am skeptical on that. However, when you talk about Sapiens, when they really do understand language, they really can, for instance, be there in a call center, be a customer representative, help desk, interface with customers, answer questions about complicated things. You really are talking about being able to initially certainly supplement human, but eventually they will take the lower tier of jobs in the information market. But most of the jobs that go first will be the ones that are tedious and boring. And it's going to take a while. But the other thing that's coming along with that loss, with the job loss, is that you're also truly creating a great deal of productivity. Eventually, productivity that becomes infinite, and that creates wealth, and wealth creates more business opportunities, and that creates more jobs. And I think for the first decade or so of Sapiens, there'll be a lot of new jobs involved where people are curating their own knowledge based on using our tools and our development environments, curating their knowledge for Sapiens. So that'll be an industry for a while, although not forever. But by the time that is done, a decade from now, it's possible that we'll be living in a very different society. And we'll be talking about that, by the way, in our next and final session, which is societal transformations caused by or engendered by our technology. But here's another kind of more esoteric thought or concern. I talked to a programmer a few years ago who said, yes, I believe that general artificial intelligence is coming, and I believe someday that there will be AI programmers that are better than I am at programming, but I'm not enthusiastic about that because I love being a programmer. Well, there's even saying that now about the chatbots, but I'm very skeptical, and many people are, that they're really going to replace that many programming jobs. However, eventually, so many jobs that people do now, Sapiens will be able to do as well as they do, or better. And that brings the question about what will people do? Will they lose motivation? For instance, if you're motivated by the competitiveness of being good at playing chess, are you no longer motivated to play chess because you know that the programs, the AIs, will beat you every time? Maybe, although I think then it really becomes the realization that you're doing what you like because you're doing it. AIs don't play chess the way humans do. So if competitiveness in playing chess is seen as with other human beings, that's not going to go away. But again, what about curiosity? What will happen when you have access to basically through your companion Sapiens all the knowledge of the world? Will you stop learning in your own right because you can ask any question could be answered? Will you even bother to go to school? I think the answer to that is unequivocal. Yes, you will need to be educated, but education will not be necessarily understood as being the acquisition of a whole lot of facts, but it'll be understood on how well in your own mind have you connected all those, connected the big picture of history and culture and technology and science and nature in your own mind, because that's the world we live in. And the more richly we realize it in our own minds, the richer our lives. So I think the availability of that knowledge will actually possibly help us better define what it means to be an educated human being and the value of education. But it will change. It will change us. And now, risks to society. We've been hearing a lot about this. And I want to make the distinction right up front between the kind of AI we were talking about, the narrow AI, the chatbots, which give the illusion of intelligence with actually not having any comprehension, but they give an illusion of it. And they have problems. And the problems of bias, which are basically rooted into their training set. People talk about mitigating that, but it's really, if there's bias in the training set, there'd be bias in the AI. And of course, there's bias in the training set because the training sets are curated by what humans have written, and human beings are biased. So there's always going to be bias there. And the misinformation. Statistical algorithms who are putting words together by their statistical probabilities without any regard to what they mean will come out with misinformation. That's not really solvable. But there is that fear that those present dangers and problems are being, I think, conflated with this one, which, let's call it the singularity scenario, where a lot of really smart people have been warning us for some time that the AI itself, as we build it, could actually become smarter than we are, and we could lose control of it. And then there could be intelligences out there that we created, but then they create more intelligences, which are vastly more intelligent than they are. And suddenly we are confronted with entities that are as greater in intelligence than we are, as we are to insects. And the latest person to join that chorus this week is Geoffrey Hinton, also called the godfather of AI, who really put today's artificial neural network technologies, machine learning, he really put it on the map back in 2012. And he now is become, just quick Google this week to warn people about the dangers of the technology he created. Well, I don't think we need to worry about these things. Why do they fear it? Why? What is? Let's look at the origins of why these very smart people are saying these things and why they're concerned. First is that they assume that artificial general intelligence will arise from future breakthroughs using artificial neural networks and stochastic algorithms similar to those that have resulted in today's large language models, which are already recognized as dangerous. And Geoffrey Hinton was one of really the person who came up with a technique that put artificial neural networks on the map. And today, in 10 short years, we've created chatbots that surprise everybody with how compelling the illusion that they're intelligent is, because they generate text that when a human reads that text, a human can't tell whether it was generated by a machine or whether it was generated by another human, that a person could have said that. And it's our nature, it's our psychology to then infer or to assume, it's called theory of the mind, that if it looks that way, I understand what it said, then the origin of it, the entity that created those words, must have known what it was talking about. And one of Hinton's students, Sylvester, said a year ago, he thought these models were starting to become a bit sentient. So I'm afraid there's a bit of magical thinking in there that somehow there's going to be another breakthrough. And that's the problem, because the ones we have today already, they can't really understand the internal operation of what's going on inside those artificial neural networks. It's not well understood. In fact, one of the breakthroughs that made them work was to seed each layer of the neural network with weights which were randomly generated. So they're basically statistical and stochastic. Stochastic algorithms can't guarantee always to return the same results from the same inputs. So we already have a technology that we don't understand how it works. If it becomes more and more complex, more and more sophisticated, to the point that it really does become something that we recognize as intelligence, really can create knowledge and have understanding of the world, you'd have something that you would have no idea what was going on in there and would not be able to predict what it was going to do. And I would be afraid of that too. So I'm not saying that their concerns aren't justified. However, there's two aspects of it that I think are gratuitous assumptions on the part of these experts. And that the next one is that intelligence itself is something that can be increased without limit. So the only real measure of intelligence is how much the quantity and quality of the knowledge that an entity possesses, and how well is it able to extend that and apply that. So that doesn't mean that intelligence, it's like some kind of a fluid that you can just increase it without any kind of limit. So is there such a thing as too much knowledge? And where does that knowledge come from, and how is it curated? If it comes from human beings and it's knowledge that humans understand, the idea of an infinite quantity of it really doesn't make sense. And the other problem that they assume is that a vast intelligence, even if it is way more intelligent and knows more what we do, would automatically have the motivation to use that knowledge to control things. And that's what people are afraid of, that it's going to go and instead of us using it, it's going to start using us. But why do they assume that intelligence automatically conveys a motivation to use that knowledge to change things up? Because human beings do have such a motivation, and it did evolve together with our ability to create knowledge. But we're talking about engineered beings here. So if we're engineering them, we're not going to engineer them to do that, except, going back to the idea of stochastic algorithms, they are saying or fearing that these intelligences are going to kind of come from some breakthrough that we really don't understand. And so if that's the case, then you really might not be. It might want to control things, and it might not. You don't really know what it might be. So that's the origin of their fear. And that's why we're not afraid of them, because none of those fears apply to our technology. First of all, the way we code our Sapience, we don't use artificial neural networks, and we don't have stochastic algorithms, and we don't put random weights and things. We don't do any of that. Our programming is what we call deterministic. It will guarantee the identical outputs from the identical inputs. That means we control them. We understand their operation precisely. We understand each step. And so as we build them to be more and more capable, we give them more and more knowledge, it would be literally incapable of altering or overriding their core programming. And again, we don't see that intelligence is something that can be increased without limit. So we are endowing Sapiens with human knowledge. So they will always be grounded in the human perspective. They will never become, no matter how smart or capable, alien to their human creators. And unlike humans, they won't have a built-in motivation to use their power to alter their environment arbitrarily for their own ends, because they won't be programmed to have any ends. They're programmed to be helpful to human beings. So the way we are doing AGI, and because of our scalability, we're going to get there soon, way sooner. So there'll be no motivation to keep experimenting with vast neural networks. I agree that that's dangerous, but it's unnecessary because it's an easier, safer way to go. So how will we control Sapiens? So in the end, as we give them more knowledge and give them more and more powerful abilities to reason, to solve problems, We also want to free them to have initiative to make decisions and to act in our behalf in many, many different ways. So they have to have a criteria for what is allowable or not. And science fiction fans will remember going back to Isaac Asimov's three laws of robotics, where he articulated what he thought were three laws that robots could be programmed to always obey. And that it's possible to create laws that we always obey with deterministic programs. And so we took a look at them and we found them lacking in a number of ways. They sounded good for science fiction, but they were a bit too open-ended, and they depended on the robot or the artificial intelligence to make judgments about what is harmful or not harmful to human beings. And some of the things in those laws are things that humans don't agree about. So we took a much more restrictive, but yet more open-ended in some ways. We're not telling so much sapiens what they must do in most cases, but the few things they're just not allowed to do. And basically, and what those are things which are objectively determinable through objective analysis, rather than having to refer to some internal feelings or sensibilities about things. And it basically comes down to this, the fundamental notion that humans have a right to their person and property, and so long as they are not infringing upon someone else's person or property, and that will guide the sapiens as well. We have these directives recently in a recently published article on the New Sapiens website, and I invite you to consider them at your leisure. So that concludes our conversation about risks and concerns about what we're doing and about artificial general intelligence in general. And we have one more session in the course, and that is to discuss how this technology going forward could transform society. And I invite you to not miss that one. In the meantime, please learn more about us on our websites, usapiens.com. mysapiens.com describes our companion Sapiens. Forward to the Future is my blog site, and you already know about our YouTube channel. And as you probably know, New Sapiens is also raising money on Start Engine through a equity crowdfunding offering. So please check that out, and we'll see you next time. Thank you very much.